When people talk, listen, man, I'm going to raise that red flag.
This narrative, especially after 1 year.
1 year.
One bad year. It's one big splash move. And because I don't think people understand how much cap space we can create.
Alex, I want to ask you, because you're a very humble person.
And I'm never going to be right about anything.
Yeah.
I was right.
What's up, y'all? I'm back again. And yeah, there's no real update. I'm just kind of back. I just been working really hard. I need to take a break, take a mental break. So you know what? I've kind of been just like doing this stuff as sort of as journaling. Look, I don't know if anybody has ever done like a therapy of any kind, but I highly recommend a way to kind of like deal with stress or take your mind off things or to kind of get center again is journaling. And journaling doesn't mean like just actually doing like a Doug Funny, like dear journal kind of thing, but it's like I kind of just write. Sometimes I'll just like listen to a TV and just like write what the TV says. Just a way to just like put my focus just on one thing and take my mind like away from the outside world. So I'm not just thinking about that over and over and over and over again. Completely take my mind off of it and dig into numbers. So that's honestly the only reason I'm doing this. It's like just an outlet to get away from the stress of opening this place. So I thought it would be fun to talk about, because for the most part, man, like everybody's pretty happy right now with everything that's going on. I know everybody's talking about Jadeveon Clowney right now. I don't think I need to because everybody else is. And it kind of just like, you either like it or you don't. Nobody really knows what's going on yet. In my opinion, it means that they're close to signing someone else and that whoever they're signing is looking for a 1-year deal. Because we already had, I know everybody's looking at cap. I don't even know what the cap number is, but I know that before the start of the regular season, you just have to look at the top 51 out of the 90, I guess. And if you look at the top 51, we had plenty of cap to sign somebody as far as like a 3 or 4 year deal. So it makes me think either we're signing multiple people or just signing somebody on a 1-year deal that needs a fully guaranteed, or just high signing bonus or yada, yada, yada. I haven't really thought a ton about it. But I want to talk about something totally different that I am hearing quite a bit because I listen to, when I'm working, I listen to other podcasts and other people that come on. And the only kind of negative comments I'm hearing is they just didn't like the Tet pick. And I get it. I mean, I get not liking it. But we had to. It had to be done. I mean, it didn't have to be Tet, but we had to take a wide receiver because it's been done every single time that a wide receiver picked in the top 2 rounds the year before doesn't hit 500 yards receiving. And I just documented over the last because I was talking about since 2019 because that's just the arbitrary number that I picked 3 months ago. So I just always use 2019 only because I don't want the consumer to think that I'm just using the year to help my case, I guess. Like I don't want to be like, since 2017, look at this cool number, and then since 2020, look at this cool number, because it's not consistent. So I just wanted to pick a consistent year for as a data point to go back to and to document from. So since 2019, we have had 26 wide receivers taken in the first 2 rounds that have not hit 500 yards receiving. 26. So that's basically 4.25 of wide receivers a year don't hit 500 yards receiving, which in theory you'd say they look like a bust. I'm not saying Excel's a bust. I'm saying that could be what the average consumer thinks. And XL just barely didn't hit it. He had 497, but he didn't hit it. I'm just going to go over really quickly wide receivers that were taken in the first 2 rounds that didn't hit 500 yards receiving since 2019. I also want to give a little background why it was important for us to take one the following year. And it's because everyone does it. We would be just like we'd be the only team with a 3rd-year quarterback that didn't give them a number 1 wide receiver. We'd also be the only team that drafted a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds that had their receiving yards under 500 that didn't improve the position the following year. So let's just go through it. Excel had 497 receiving yards, of course, became 10. Henry Ruggs, and that's an interesting one because first of all, he only played 12 games. And then second of all, out of nowhere, here comes Darren Waller, who was a Pro Bowler. Josh Jacobs, who was a Pro Bowler. Renfro, who was on his way and was a Pro Bowler the following year. And Nelson Aguilar had 896 yards receiving on that team that year. And out of the 12 games that Ruggs played, the last 3 that he played, he barely did. He couldn't play. You can look at his stats. It was like 0 yards, 18 yards, and something. So he basically played 9 games healthy. And he had 452 yards. Well, first of all, I don't think you need to draft a skilled player because you're playing with 3 Pro Bowlers of the first 2 years. And you had Nelson Aguilar hit 900 yards receiving. And you hit 452 yards playing basically 9 games. So that's one of the only outliers where they didn't draft the following year. And because they drafted multiple wide receivers the year before, they drafted Brian Edwards also that year. But that's one of the few outliers. So Henry Ruggs was the next one down. Traylon Burks, he had 444 yards receiving. He had a big injury. I don't know if you remember the catch in the end zone. I don't know what he did, but he only played 11 games. And he also had Tannehill. They drafted Malik Willis. They had Tannehill. He only played 12 games. Malik Willis came in, and he was absolutely terrible. And then even though all that happened, they went out and spent on a wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. So they improved the position by getting one in free agency, which we weren't able to do. Rondale Moore is the next one. He was a second-round pick. He had 435 yards. They went out the following year and got Hollywood Brown. They traded for him. He was a first-round pick and only 25 years old. Quentin Johnston. He had 431 yards receiving. And they got Ladd McConkey the next year at 34. Kadarius Toney, he was a first-round pick. He hit 420 yards. He only played 10 games because of the hamstring injury. I don't know if you remember Kadarius Toney when he was on the Chiefs. He grabbed his hamstring. It was like a joke because people were calling him injury-prone. But regardless, they got Wan'Dale Robinson at the 43rd pick the following year. Jonathan Mingo had 418 yards receiving, and obviously they went out and drafted Xavier Legette the next year. Ricky Pearsall, he played, I don't even know how many games he played. I know he missed at least 4. He was never right until the end of the year. He had 400 yards receiving. He got shot. I'm going to call that an outlier because they didn't address the skill player position this year. It's also an outlier because they don't have any money because they paid Brandon Ayuk and they have Chris McCaffrey and George Kittle and Juwan Jennings and all those guys. Ayuk got hurt last year. TMC got hurt last year. So they're kind of adding to the position. Also, in the final 2 games of Pearsall's of 2015, Pearsall had 14 catches for 210 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I'm going to take, and he's still 400 yards receiving, only playing like after getting shot. So I'm going to kind of make the decision that he doesn't really belong in here. So I'm just going to kind of scratch him out. Below him, Jalen Rager, he had 396 yards receiving. He only played 11 games. He played with Carson Wentz, who only played 12 games. And they still drafted Devonta Smith the next year with the 10th overall pick. We had KJ Hamler. He had 381 yards receiving. They didn't address the room last year, the year after, but it's because they had Jerry Jeudy going first overall. And still, so I'm going to include, this is the first time I need to include this because it's going to come on later on. They still added a skill player, a pass catcher. They added to the skill position room. And the following year, they still drafted Javonte Williams with the 35th overall pick. So they were still adding skilled players in that room. And KJ Hamler he was a second round pick when Jeudy was the first round pick, and he had 381 yards. So it was a little nuanced. I'm going to consider them helping the quarterback at least with getting a guy like Javonte Williams, who was a pass catcher before he got hurt. Let's keep going. Marvin Mims. So Marvin Mims is also an interesting outlier. One, because the dude kind of was drafted as a returner as well, and he went to the Pro Bowl his rookie year as a returner. So that's different. They still had a number one in Cortland Sutton, and they still addressed the position heavily. So one, they didn't have a second round pick because of the Russell Wilson trade. And they drafted a quarterback with a first round pick. So they couldn't really address the position in the first 2 rounds because they got a quarterback and then they didn't have the second. But they still got Franklin, Bailey, and Estime. They still drafted 3 skill players after that. So I'm going to say they addressed the position, even though by what I've been saying is in the first 2 rounds they would address it. They didn't have a second round pick. And they still got Franklin. They still got 2 players, and they got running back. So they addressed it. Like they addressed it. And I don't really consider Marvin Mims as only a receiver. He got picked for the last pick of the second round the year before, and they needed him as a returner, which he went to the Pro Bowl for. So that's a little. I'm gonna consider a Pro Bowler not really belonging in this area, but if he does, they still addressed the wide receiver position. And he was the last pick of the second round. Denzel Mims, he had 357 yards. The next year, they addressed the position with Elijah Moore with the 34th overall pick. I can't read my own handwriting. A.D. Mitchell, he had 312 yards last year. They addressed pass catcher with Tyler Warren this year with the 14th overall pick. Sky Moore had 250 yards receiving. They addressed the position with Rashee Rice with the 55th overall pick. I believe they also got Hollywood Brown in as a free agent that year, and Juju. I can't remember specifically if it's Juju. The next one is Tyquan Thornton. He had 247 yards receiving, which is so. I don't think they addressed it with one specific player, but the next year, because that year they had, I believe that year they had Cam, and Tyquan Thornton made sense because Cam had a big arm, could throw it downfield. They addressed the position the next year with Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry, Gesicki, and Jalen Rager. Like, I don't know if you remember that year where it was like they were signing people over and over and over again. You're like, what the hell's going on? After that, we had Wan'Dale Robinson. They drafted Hyatt in the 3rd, and they brought in Darren Waller on a big contract. That was kind of sad for them. And Wan'Dale only had 227 yards that year, like the prior year. And the next year, they brought in Waller and Hyatt in the 3rd round. but I was at the preseason game with the Panthers preseason game with the Giants. Waller was just crushing us. Waller was obviously being used as a wide receiver, and that was addressing that position. Van Jefferson had 220 yards, and then the year after they drafted Tutu Atwell, 57th overall. Isabella for the Cardinals had 189 yards. They got DeAndre Hopkins the following year. It was a trade. They traded the running back, David Johnson. Keep going. Arcega Whiteside for the Eagles hit 169 yards receiving, and they got Rager in the draft with the 21st overall pick the following year, so they addressed the position. TMJ for the Panthers had 138 yards. He barely played, really, and the next year they got Adam Thielen and DJ Chark, which I thought was a good signing at the time. And they got Hayden Hurst. They got Miles Sanders. None of them really worked out outside of Thielen, but Thielen that year had 1,000 yards. They addressed the position. Paris Campbell had 138 yards. They got Michael Pittman at the 34th overall pick and Jonathan Taylor at the 41st overall pick the year after. So they addressed that position. N'Keal Harry was so weird because that's the year that Tom Brady left, and so the next year, I don't remember what's going on. It was just like this weird like little era. N'Keal Harry also only played 7 games. I'm gonna say if you play 7 games, you don't really belong in this little area. But regardless, it got 2 tight ends in the 3rd. But it was just weird. It was just a weird time. That whole New England time was weird. So I guess Thornton was not. I guess Thornton was drafted in the Mac Jones era. Yeah, that's right. So I was wrong when I said that before. Thornton wasn't drafted for Cam. Even though Cam was, I mean, they were in a competition for the following year, and Cam just got cut because Mac Jones beat him out. That was a year off, so I misspoke. The Cam year is when they had 2 tight ends because Tom left. So that was just kind of a weird timing, and he only played 7 games the prior year. I'm just going to call that an outlier. Jalen Polk only had 87 yards last year, and they brought in Stephon Diggs. They drafted Henderson at pick 38 and Kyle Williams at pick 69. Nice. Eskridge for the Seahawks was drafted, and he had 44 yards, and they picked Kenneth Walker with the 41st overall pick. Jameson Williams only played 6 games and had 41 yards. The following year, they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs at 12th and Laporta at 34th. And then Atwell had 0 yards. The following year, they had no first or second. They signed Allen Robinson to a big deal, even though he didn't work out. So I just went over all these picks and that they addressed the position, or they addressed skill player the following year, right? Unless these players were playing like 7 games or they got shot. So if every other team is addressing the position that your player also fits in that same category, you had to draft 10. You just had to, unless you could somehow maneuver the draft with trades and stuff like that and overcomplicated it. But you had to get him a number 1. You had to upgrade the position. The whole narrative about Excel, they believed in him. They believed in his development. No other team did. No other team was doing it. Don't care what their upside is. They didn't care. They still improved the position because they knew they couldn't take the chance on it happening again, even if they believed in these guys. Look at every single one. So let's look at and this is 26 different players. 26. And almost all of them, unless there was some extenuating circumstance, they all addressed the position the following year, all these teams. So now let's just look at the first round picks. So they're all pretty much the same kind of narrative. So you have Excel, we're just going to put him to the side for right now. So the next one is Ruggs. Well, Ruggs only played 12 games. And then 3 of the other pass catchers in that offense became Pro Bowlers within those 2 years. Our other receivers were Coker, who didn't hit 500 yards, Adam Thielen, who missed half the season with injury, who's 35, and then guys. There's no that they don't even belong in the same sentence. If he played, and he basically this is basically also only 9 games because his last 3 games he was just kind of a shell of himself. But even if it was 12 games, if the dude plays one more game and he's at 552 yards, he's gonna hit. So Excel played 16, he played 12. So Ruggs, and his first year they got him. I guess they're similar. So, and he was playing with Zay Jones, who came out of nowhere, played well, and Aguilar, who had 900 yards basically. So that offense was already set. If you say I have me who was good for the. I mean, you play say 9 real games and I had 452 yards. If you just add 8 more, 7 more, I'm gonna hit almost 1,000. And you have Renfro who's a Pro Bowler. You have Waller who's a Pro Bowler. You have Jacobs who's a Pro Bowler. You have Nelson Aguilar who hit 900 yards, and you have Zay Jones who was very. Your core was great. I mean, they didn't need it the following. And you had young Brian Edwards who was developing. So that's the next first round pick. Then you had Burks, who played 11 games. He was Tannehill that year was struggling. He played 12 games. They brought in Malik Willis, and it was just kind of a shit show for the Titans. That was one of the years where they were one of the most injured teams of all time, and they still brought in DeAndre Hopkins the next year. You had Quentin Johnston. Now this is fun. Like I think this is the comp because he played 17 games. He had 431 yards. Herbert was hurt for 4 games. He only played 13 games. Also, he was the only receiver because Keenan Allen got hurt. Mike Williams got hurt. He immediately got the number 1, which so did Excel. I think Quentin Johnston is a very, very, very good comp. But regardless, they still got Ladd McConkey. They still brought him in. And they went out and got Colby Parkinson, who didn't end up working out. I don't believe. And then the following year, they still got Trey Harris. They brought in DJ Chark, who ended up having a problem with his knee, I guess. He didn't play the whole season. They brought in Brendan Rice. But they brought in Ladd, who was a 1,000-yard pass catcher. So even though he struggled, they still followed the same idea. Then you had Pearsall, who got shot. And then of his 400 yards, 210 of them were the last 2 games when he was finally healthy. I think we can kind of count on him, especially when our other pass catchers are Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, and Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey. He's not expected to be your number 1, whereas Excel, the narrative was that he was your number 1. So I think that we don't have to even address that. Jalen Reagor, he only played 11 games. He played with Carson Wentz, who only played 12 games. He still had 936 yards, and they still drafted Devonta Smith 10th overall the following year. The other number 1 pick, the first round picks, you had N'Keal Harry. He only played 7 games, and it was a weird time going over from Tom to Cam. And then Jamison Williams, who only played 6 games, and they still added Jahmyr Gibbs, 12th overall, and Laporta, 41st overall. So, 1, you can easily say they weren't going to not address the position. And they weren't even going to wait till people were saying that maybe you look for Noel in the third after you double dip a pass catcher. It was always going to be a receiver, at least in the second. But when you're talking about only 8 receivers got picked in the first 2 rounds, which is one of the lowest in recent history, so only 8 receivers were had top 2 round grades. Probably means that you better get them in the first because they might not be there at 57, and then you definitely don't want to trade up for this receiving class. So Tet, it had to be like whatever you think about Tet, it had to be Tet, or it had to be some maneuvering that you think that not you, just a general you think that this Panthers team can just understand that these players that would fit within the system would just be there. And if they traded back, it's already been reported that the Cowboys wanted him, the Packers liked him, the Rams liked him. You weren't going to get him later, probably. So now let's talk about Excel. Because I like Excel, and I want him to do well. So I think the best comp is Quentin Johnston. Because you know what? He dealt with drop issues. He had problems with drops, and he had who was supposed to be the top 2 pass catchers on his team, not be there. So he got thrusted into the spotlight early as well because we had Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen that were supposed to be the guys. He had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen that were supposed to be the guys. And they both got hurt. And we lost. We traded Deontay, and and Thielen missed 7, 8 games. So they both had very similar rookie seasons. And Quentin Johnston had 38 catches, 431 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Excel had 49 catches, 497 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So he was slightly better. And the next year, Quentin Johnston had 55 catches for 711 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he went from 2 to 8 touchdowns. He had a 300-yard bump, and he caught 17 more passes. You know what? If that same thing happened to Excel, that equates to 66 catches for basically 800 yards and 10 touchdowns. And I think that's about right. I think adding Tet makes Excel way more attractive. So even if you don't like Tet, it's great for Excel. If you say that Tet comes in, just like Lad did, say Lad came in and got 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns, I don't know what he had. But you say that right behind him, you have a Leggett, who had 66 catches for 800 yards and 10 touchdowns. That receiving core looks awesome. So you're not just drafting this guy for him, you're drafting him for the whole receiving core. And man, it starts to look real nice right now. Real nice. But overall, I just because I need to take my mind off stuff, I just want to go through all the other wide receivers that had problems their first 2 years, and that showing that it's the right thing to do to address the position, even if you like the guy. Even if you like the guy, you still sign Hopkins. You still draft Leggett. You still draft Devonta Smith. You still do that because a lot of these teams are good teams. The Eagles did this. So you had Rager that didn't work out, and you got drafted Smith. You had Arcega-Whiteside that didn't work out. You drafted Rager. And even when you had Smith, you still traded for A.J. Brown. So if we want to be like the Eagles, that's the way to do it. If they don't work out early, you just keep on adding to the position until they do, instead of saying, "Oh, this person didn't work out. Let's put even more pressure on them to be good the following year." That's pressure. Because what if I don't perform this year? That's 2 years in a row, then I'm a bust. So it was always supposed to be Tet. I'm so glad it was Tet. And no matter what anybody else thinks, it was the right move because everyone else does it. Because you have to. Even if he's not your guy, you have to keep addressing the position. If not your guy, I mean, he's still talent you're adding to the room that you have to do because you can't not address it and it not work out again. Because then you just wasted another year of your quarterback's rookie contract. So they did it because everyone does it, and it shouldn't be looked down upon because they would look incompetent if they didn't do it, because they'd be the only team in the NFL that, one, wouldn't give a number one wide receiver to their third-year quarterback, and the only team that didn't address the position after that player didn't have 500 yards their first year. So I hope that all made sense, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and I gotta get back to work. Peace.